Welcome to r/entitled people, where we share stories from your lives about people who think the rules don't apply to them and they should get what they want. Thank you, friends, for subscribing to the channel and for so many likes. And today we have 3 great stories, so subscribe, hit the like button, and let's begin. The first story. This woman called the cops on me for parking near her car, but she parked in a handicapped spot. It's me, petty revenge. The second story. The lawyer put Karen and entitled manager in their place. The third story. The HOA fines the uncle for the fence and his color, threatens his dogs, but he's not a member of the HOA. The first story is Urban Justice, Honestly. Sailor Jim walks in, a yellow piece of paper in his hand and a grin on his face. He walks up to the bar, collects his usual, and settles in at his customary table. After taking a sip of his drink, his grin becomes a full smile, and he waves the paper in the air. Shipmates, this small piece of paper the price tag for my giving a lesson in comparative economics, classical nautical fighting maneuvers, common courtesy, manners, and urban justice. I suspect y'all recall my story of last month, where I made a young lady feel terrible about parking in the handicap spot by pretense. Well, I received enough negative feedback on that particular post that when the little red sports car pulled into the only handicap parking space at a hamburger joint this morning, I decided to handle it more honestly and openly. I rolled down my window and called to the woman exiting the car. "Excuse me, miss? That's the only handicap parking space here, and there are lots of regular spaces nearly as close. You really shouldn't park there, you know?" She replied by flipping me off and telling me to call the effing cops if I didn't like it. Then she flounced through the doors and into the store. More bemused than annoyed, I considered my choices, doing my best to remember what others here had replied to my last bout of urban justice. I finally concluded that this was an excellent opportunity to reenact a classical nautical battle, maneuver, from those days when sails and oars were the only means of propulsion and cannon shot often settled matters. You see, most naval vessels were either not equipped to fire in a forward direction or only had limited abilities in that direction. So every captain strove in battle conditions to outmaneuver his opponent and cross his T. By bringing one ship across the bow of your enemy, being the crossbar to his upright, one had the chance to do some serious damage with minimum risk of return fire. I looked the situation over and decided that this was the exact case here. Maximum damage with minimum risk. I backed out and, judging the distances involved, reparked my little pickup close to an inch behind her rear bumper, lengthwise with my passenger door just off her left rear panel, forming a very pretty metal letter T. I then shut off the engine and walked back into the burger joint, noticing in passing that her front tires were in contact with the curb and grinning. When I walked back in, I made a point of calling out to the gal behind the counter and letting her know that I had changed my mind and would eat in this morning. The sports car gal, who had already made it to the front of the line, sneered at me and started to flip me off again, but then noticed the parking arrangement behind me. "You effing a-hole," she screamed at me, whilst walking towards the doors. "You can't effing park there." "No," I quietly corrected, seating myself in a booth and taking out my breakfast. "You mean we can't effing park there, right?" "D it, you can't do this, it's illegal." I grinned and swallowed sausage and egg before replying, "Really? Wait a minute, how did you put it?" After pretending to think about it for a second, I snapped my fingers. Now I remember. I carefully flipped her off and told her to call the effing cops if she didn't like it. Which, if you can believe it, she did. She actually went up to the counter and demanded they call the cops. When she did, I got up and walked over. She screamed that now she had me, and I ordered another breakfast sandwich. The patrol car showed up around 20 or so minutes later, while I was sipping a really bad cup of coffee. The professional coffee joints had nothing to fear from this place. The sports car gal had been getting louder and louder, complaining over and over again about how she was going to be late for class, and what an a-hole I was, and how she's going to sue the burger joint for not forcing me to move. And thankfully, the policeman walking in finally interrupted her diatribe, misspelling intentional, by asking whose truck and sports car these were. Sports car gal ran up to the policeman and demanded that I be ticketed, towed, arrested, and shot. I walked up behind her and told him that I was the pickup, which the loud girl here was the sports car. While she gloated, he wrote me this here ticket I've been waving around. It's for parking illegally in a public area and will cost me $50 to settle. While he wrote it out, sports car gal taunted me, telling me what a total loser I was for being stupid enough to wait around for the cops to show up, and that this would teach me for effing with innocent women, and that she sputtered to a halt when the policeman turned and started writing out her ticket for parking illegally in a handicapped space. It was her second offense too. He'd run our plates before coming in. $500. SJ grins around a sip of cognac and diet soda. Oh dear me, the noises that came from that woman. I honestly thought she was about to have a stroke. She started to argue and plead, but what could she say? While she was sputtering, I tapped her on the shoulder and, when she turned to face me, explained that I had waited around for the police because it was the only way to ensure that she'd still be there when they finally showed up. Then I told the smiling officer to have a nice day and took off to work. I arrived an hour late and $50 poorer, but it was worth the write-up and every penny. The second story is Nakk the Anti-Karen, savior of employees, conqueror of managers, perdition of Karens, subjugator of Kevins. K equals Karen, N equals Nakk, M equals female manager, E equals employee. I have a friend who I like to call Rose, Steven Universe reference, and she has a big sister. She is a cosmic anomaly with the destruction powers of an Omega Karen, but who uses them for justice, so I call her Nakk for this post. Nakk is a tall, brunette, mildly muscular lawyer with curly hair, who has faced, hunted, and defeated many Karen. She's usually very kind, but when she uses her Nega Karen abilities, she is an unstoppable source of destruction, and I witnessed one of these moments. This happened a couple of years ago. Halloween was close, so we were at the supermarket buying things to have a spooky movies marathon, and to buy the candy. Me, Rose, Nakk, and other two friends were browsing through the aisles, picking our stuff, when we saw a woman loudly complaining about incompetent kids, and how they waste her time and other stuff. An employee came with a box. She grabbed the box, told the guy about time, and left. Nakk, being the natural enemy for Karens, wanted to say something to her, but the woman was fast leaving the store, so we forgot about her. We keep shopping and finally went to the deli section because Nakk wanted to make some pichanga, ham and cheese on little cubes, olives and pickled carrots, onions and pickles. There was only one employee, and she wasn't only cutting ham and cheese. She also was labeling the bread and fruit, and taking care of the french fries so the line was slow. A middle-aged man aggressively complained and told her to be faster, but Nakk told him, "There is only one girl doing all the work alone. If you want to complain to do it with the boss for the lack of staff, it's not the girl's fault." The man was a little embarrassed and just waited like the rest of us. There was only one person ahead of us when the Karen from early came back. Apparently she forgot to take her purchases with her some minutes ago, and she was blaming the employee over it. K, just do your work, and give me my stuff now. E, okay ma'am, let me finish with this customer and... Interrupted by Karen. K, I was first, and it was your fault for losing my stuff. Now give them to me, now. E, miss, I can't just... Interrupted by Karen. K, do you want me to get the manager to do it for you? Stupid kids like you. Interrupted by Nakk. N, what's your problem? You forgot your stuff and you're blaming her? K, listen here. Interrupted by Nakk. N, no, you listen here. It was your fault. Interrupted by Karen. K, don't you dare to interrupt. Interrupted by Nakk. N, don't interrupt me. You're an old woman. Behave like one and don't blame your errors on other people. Karen grabbed a can of pineapple from her cart. K, I'm gonna break your face, you W. N, try it. Karen huffed and walked away after yelling, "If I find your house, I'm gonna burn it down." We thought that was all, but no. We went to the car, but Nakk got a call. Her husband asked her to buy some groceries. We put our stuff on Nakk's car and went back to the store. We went to the deli again to grab some turkey ham just to find Karen and a manager yelling to the employee. Karen has a disgusting, smug face, and the manager wasn't so different. M, what were you thinking? Insulting a client. You can't behave like this. K, someone forgot who pays their salary. I'm gonna need the corporate number. M, of course, ma'am. I can assure you we're going to fix her behavior. K, okay, then I want my stuff in a discount. M, you heard her. Do your job properly, and I don't want to hear something like this again. The manager had a big smile, so she probably had something against this employee from before. We could see what was about to happen. You could almost see the steam coming out of her ears, and she went full negative Karen mode. N, what the F is going on here? Why are you, pointing at the manager, reprehending this girl, when this woman was the one harassing her? M, excuse me, what do you mean? N, I saw the whole thing. This woman was harassing this employee and you're blaming her? What kind of manager are you? How can you believe this woman over your employee? K, this is not your business, and what do you mean by that? Are you calling me a liar? N, yes, you're a liar, and you, to the manager, aren't protecting your employee. I'm going to report this issue, and the workload she was carrying alone. The manager rolled her eyes with a whatever expression, until Nakk dropped the bomb. She took her business card and handed to the girl. N, Nakk Karen Slayer. Lawyers specialized on working laws. The health ministry would be glad to hear about the cross-examination between all the products who go through this section. Also, I'm gonna need the camera footage. I have several witnesses of a violent threat, but I want video proof. Karen tried to leave, saying you don't deserve my time, but Nakk attacked with leave and I'll call the cops to arrest you and my firm to sue you. At this point, Karen and the manager were pale white and tried to argue, But in Iraq, Karen's Bane didn't listen to her sad story. At the end, she reported the lack of staff, but the Karen was different. The employee felt sorry for the Karen, so Nakk only demanded a letter of apology instead of sue her entitled A. And the last story is, Uncle lived near an HOA. So my uncle bought a piece of land and built his house on it several years later. Several houses were made around him, and an HOA was formed. He never joined it because he hated the idea of HOAs. The whole problem started when my uncle saw several kids playing in his backyard. Now my uncle has 7 dogs. 2 are bloodhounds. 1 was a pit bull and the rest were mutts, so he was worried that the kids might be getting bit by a dog. So he built a fence around the border of his land. It took him 3 days to finish. However, the day after he finished, he gets a fine from the HOA for building the fence without the permission of the HOA. He ignores it since he's not part of the HOA, and the fence is on his land and was not breaking any rules. A week later, someone from the HOA comes to talk to him about the fence, and he says he's not paying the fine because he's not part of the HOA, and he then explains why he built the fence. The HOA apparently thought he had 1 dog and not 7. My uncle says goodbye, thinking they had come to an agreement that the fence was fine, but my uncle would paint it, which he already planned to do. He had just not gotten around to it. The next day, however, he gets several fines, one of which was for his dogs, and another was for the fence. He again ignored it again. Several days later, he buys 2 white paint cans and starts to paint the fence. However, while he's doing it, several people that live there walk by. Some said hi, others just glared at him as they walked by. He paid them no mind, and after a while, several people from the HOA came by to complain about the color he chose. He didn't understand what was wrong. After all, it was white, so he asked what was wrong with it, and they said they didn't approve him building the fence, yet alone painting it, and they proceeded to say that he has to tear down the whole fence by the end of the week, and then request for permission to build the fence again. He refuses and says again that he was not part of the HOA. This turns into an argument where his dogs are brought up, and by the end of it, they were threatening his dogs. By this point, there was a small crowd gathering, watching, so my uncle calms himself down, picks up his paint, and goes back home. 3 days later, while he was walking around the inside of the fence, he finds several pieces of bacon covered in a white powder. When he picked them up, he realized they smell like a chemical, and he realized that someone was trying to poison his dogs. Getting super peeved, he installs several cameras around the fence to find out who it was, and he actually gets them on camera one night. So he goes to the HOA's meeting that was happening next month, but when he gets there, it turned out that the person trying to poison his dogs was the HOA's president, who I will call her Karen. He hadn't even met it until then. He still showed the video and even brought some bacon as proof, and said that if it continued, he would contact the police. After that, the bacon stopped being thrown into his yard, and she was voted out and later moved somewhere else. It wasn't until a month after the Karen moved that he was told the kids he saw playing in his yard were the Karen's kids, and that since he built the fence, they had been complaining non-stop for months that they could no longer play there. And my uncle only didn't call the cops immediately because he had some bad run-ins with them when he was younger and didn't trust them to not screw him over. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to subscribe.